Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started because we do have a lot to go through. So this is going to be, as it says here, an overview of Zoom for remote teaching. My name is Nick Swinehart, Multimedia Pedagogy Specialist at the Language Center. Alba is going to be leading the second half of this presentation. She will be doing her best to answer questions as they come up in the chat. There will be many questions that you have that we don't have the answers to, that the university hasn't figured out yet. So Alba, feel free to say, I don't know, or, you know, we don't think there's an answer for that yet, but we'll try to get those answers figured out as they come in. Okay, so a couple of disclaimers about this workshop and about the situation in general. So out there in the audience, there is a wide range of experience in this group. Some people have used Zoom quite a bit. Some people don't know what the word Zoom means in this context. So for the experienced users, I would say to please, you might know a lot of this already, and that's fine. Just, you know, be patient as we go through this. If you're an inexperienced user, please understand that you're going to have a lot of questions still. You know, at the end of this hour, we can't cover everything. You won't be an expert, but hopefully you will be familiar with the basics and have an idea of, you know, of how to get started. And then you can follow up with us and ask more questions, meet with me or Alba one-on-one. We can do Zoom meetings. So we will try our best at the end to have a question and answer period, but yeah, so there will be questions and that's okay. So IT services and your department, you know, take precedence over whatever I'm saying today or whatever Alba says. So if IT services, I'm sure they're working very hard to get their announcements ready, their workshops. If anything, or if your department tells you something different than what I said, of course we need to, you know, they take precedent. And so don't say, Nick and Alba said this. We're just trying to help get out in front of this thing, help people get familiar. And like I said, there's going to be a lot of unanswered questions. We'll answer as many as we can at the end of the session, and then we'll try to answer more in the coming days too. So Zoom, what is Zoom? Zoom is a video conferencing platform. It does several other things too, but first and foremost, it does video conferencing. So there's an application. Most of you, if you click the link that I sent, and it might have automatically installed an application to your computer. But there's also a web browser where you can just have it within Chrome or Firefox. But in my experience, people typically use the application. One thing about Zoom is it uses meeting IDs, not usernames or phone numbers. So this is it. This is the meeting space that I set up for this meeting, and you all came and met me here in this space, right? I didn't have to call anyone or get your username or anything like that. So for example, I'm logged in with my nswinehart at uchicago.edu account. So my meeting ID for that account is this number here. So for every account, there is a standard meeting ID. And so then if this is my meeting ID, then my meeting link is this here. So you can see the meeting link is my meeting ID number at the end of this other URL. You might notice that the link that you clicked today was not this because I created a separate meeting using a different meeting ID. But this right here is my standard meeting ID for my account, which everyone who creates an account or has an account will get. I will talk about the UChicago process of accounts, which is very much up in the air, but we'll talk about that towards the end of my session. I can't see that, unfortunately. What does that say? Oh no. So I don't know if there's any, okay. Anyways, it must not have been important. So another note here is that we're talking a lot about Zoom these last few days. Zoom is specifically for synchronous class meetings, okay? So this right now is a synchronous meeting where we are all meeting together at the same time versus asynchronous meetings. So as you're thinking about doing this remote emergency teaching is kind of what I'm trying to call it, is you might have, some of your class will become synchronous, these types of meetings, typically via Zoom, though there are some other options, but you also have asynchronous elements. So I don't want you to think that everything has to be on Zoom, this question is kind of out of my level of, you know, if the university, I don't know anything about the policies in terms of if you were meeting face-to-face this many hours before, how is that going to translate? Is it a one-to-one translation online? I don't know. But just know that today with Zoom, we're talking about synchronous class content, class meetings. But asynchronous things could include recorded lectures, online discussion, things like online discussion boards. Read and write just meaning students read something and then they write the response, kind of a more traditional online learning or remote learning thing. But I think for me, so I mean, again, like I'm in no position to say right now how much, there is no answer for the balance here. But for me, I think that personally, if we're talking about holding classes online, to me, that means a significant use of synchronous sessions, right? For class dynamics, which I know Alba will talk about, communication with the students, having the class feel like a group, having the students feel like you're their teacher. I think synchronous sessions are very important for that. So some benefits to Zoom. I mean, we have 86 people in here right now. Seems to me, I hope that everything's going well. Let me check the chat box real quick. And I mean, it seems like, yeah, there are 86 people in here. I think things are going okay so far. Many of you probably never used Zoom before, but here you are, you made it in this meeting, right? By clicking that link, clicking okay. So easy to use, simple interface. So I said I tested many platforms when we were starting the shared courses initiative, maybe 4 or 5 years ago when I was just starting here. I tried WebEx, BlueJeans, GoToMeeting, all these things, whatever. But a long time ago, we settled on Zoom because I find it, and all the instructors so far say it's really easy to use. Now, it doesn't have the functionality of something like Adobe Connect or some other things that have 100 bells and whistles and a very busy screen. So there's some benefits and drawbacks there. But as far as the benefit of Zoom, I think it's easy to use, simple interface. One good thing is it's easy. It's designed for group meetings instead of Skype or FaceTime where you're like, okay, how do I bring in another person to this Skype call or this FaceTime call? Zoom by definition is a meeting space. So it's easy to have group meetings. You don't have to, in this situation, I sent you all this link and you all clicked it and got to my meeting space pretty easily. So I didn't have to get a Skype name from each of you. So the good and bad there is like, you can't call, like if I was like, where is Joe? He's late for this meeting. I can't call him through Zoom. I can send him an invite, or I can make sure he has the link, but you can't call people through Zoom. You can only meet them in this online meeting space. I need to move this for, let's see. So there's a number of features that are useful for our teaching online, but at the same time, I think a good thing about Zoom, again, in my opinion, is that it tends to favor simplicity over extended functionality. So again, there's not 100 different things you could do here. We'll talk about some of the more advanced functions and features. But there are some things that are useful for online teaching. Okay, so in just a minute, I'm going to give you all the chance to kick the tires a little bit. So that means I will stop sharing my screen and you'll see what just the typical Zoom, like when content isn't being shared. I'm even going to I'm going to give you the option to unmute if you would like. You can turn on, if you don't have your video on already, you can do that. I'm going to walk you through some of these things that you might see. As long as so don't go in the bottom, I said bottom, yeah, don't go in the bottom right and click leave meeting because then you'll be gone. But otherwise, feel free to click things, experiment. You can, so in the bottom left, so, all right, so right now I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to, let me see if I can. So you can now unmute yourself if you want to. It might get a little loud in here and a little crazy, but so go ahead and you can, in the bottom left is mute or unmute. The arrow next to mute lets you look at your audio controls. Next to that is where you control your video. You can
hear me now, right, Nick?
I can hear you, Valentina. We all can hear you. So next to stop video is some video options. So I'm kind of going across the screen here. You can invite people, manage participants. If you haven't already, click the participants button and you should be able to see who all is in here. There's a lot of people, which is really exciting. I have some options that you don't have right now because right now I'm the host. So I will talk about what it means to be a host in a little bit. Can you all see share screen? Not that you should click it, but do you have the share screen button or no?
Mm-hmm.
Yay, nay.
Share screen.
Is there a green share screen button?
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
when I share my screen, I click that share screen button and then you can see my content.
There it is.
So again, as the, somebody is sharing their screen, whether they meant to or not, they're doing it.
Something about COVID.
Yeah. So let's see, I'm going to take control of the screen again. Let's see. So now you can see my screen again.
Yeah.
One thing you should try to do is if I stop sharing my screen again, if you minimize, go in the top left on a Mac and make it go, oh, I can't minimize. But when you minimize it, then you should get a little pop-up where you can then see your desktop, but you can still see me, hopefully. And then to get back into the meeting, just click that.
Wait a minute, how do I get back?
There should be like in that button, there should be a little box that has a green arrow.
Ah, got it, thank you.
Okay. Or at the bottom of your taskbar, the bottom of your screen, you click the Zoom icon again, then it should bring you back in the meeting. So hopefully we didn't lose anyone there.
I think you lost me.
Who is that?
There you go.
Did you find green arrow?
Okay. So I think I'm going to mute you all again and keep on going with the, let's see. So I'm going to share my screen again.
Screen. Oh,
There.
it's share screen. Yeah.
I'm going to. Okay, so now everyone I think is muted again and we're back to where we began. So somebody just circled that, cool. Yeah, do not click leave meeting unless you want to leave the meeting, then go ahead. So, okay, bottom left is audio and video controls, chat, participants. Okay, in the top right, I haven't said this yet, when I stop sharing, and if you go full screen, then you might have the options that have gallery view or speaker view. So if you haven't already, try clicking gallery view so that you can see, this is like, I've never seen this many people in a Zoom meeting before, so this is really cool. So it's like the Brady Bunch, only even more. So up in the top right, you can click between gallery view and speaker view. So if I wanted to see you all, I would have it on the gallery view, like the Brady Bunch. But normally for your classes, at least for students, if you're kind of doing this, like I'm doing, leading a meeting, you would want to have it on speaker view. Again, that should be in the top right. So let me get back to, okay, so. I'm going to share my screen again. We will try to do some quick technical component Q&A maybe before Alba begins if we have time. So I'll try to get through some of this. Okay, so hopefully you saw most of these things. Okay, so again, I was the host, so I had some options that you didn't. So hosts can manage participants, so I can mute you all and allow you to share your audio, share your screen, or I can say not. Okay, mute all, allow screen sharing. I can lock the meeting, so if I know that, if I have a class of say 10 people, and I know that all 10 people are there, I could lock the meeting. Now for you, if you only have that class of 10 people, and there's no fear of extra people joining in and disrupting during the class, then you probably don't need to lock the meeting. But for us in the Language Center, we have, we use Zoom for all types of things, including one-on-one English, oral English interviews with students around the world. And we often we reuse the same link a whole lot. And so once I'm in a meeting with a student and doing a 20 to 30 minute oral interview, I'll usually lock the meeting so that we don't get disrupted by other people. Again, this is only for hosts. You can record the meeting, so I hope to God this is being recorded. It looks like it is. So there are some more advanced functions that we'll talk about in just a second. So the basic functions, and so again, going with the whole, right now we're in phase 1 crisis mode. We're in an emergency where we need to get everyone up to these basic functions. So for me, that includes starting and ending a meeting, controlling the audio and video, like I said, you should see mute, you should see either show video or stop video. So basic understanding of those things. Sharing your screen, not now please, but later on you should know how to share your screen. Being able to view participants so you can see who is there, even if you can't see them all, you know, with your video feed, you can at least see the list of who all is there. And then chatting, so if basic understanding of how to chat. So some more advanced functions, breakout rooms is a big one that I know many people have questions about. Alba is going to talk more about this today. And as soon as this meeting ends, and as soon as I can process this video and upload it and type up, we have these links typed up ready to go. Just like those other kind of blog post announcements I've been sending out, I'm going to send out a blog post that has tons of resources, more than you could look at in a brief time. But so that will be a good place to look for questions, but always talking to me too, or Alba. So there's a polling function. So I could say, how many people have used Zoom before? And it would go be shot out to you all. Let's try that right now. No, never mind. Let's not try that. Why did I do that? Sorry. Okay. Let's not get too creative here. Okay. So I could send out a poll to you all. Again, if in this situation with 90 participants now, that might be a great idea. In your class of 10 people, maybe it's not, or you know, if you have a smaller number of students. Advanced control of participants. So again, in these early stages, you should at least know how to see who all is in this group or who all is in the meeting. But then later on, as you become more advanced, figuring out how to have more control over those participants. Being able to lock the meeting, managing recordings, scheduling meetings. So as you become more familiar with this stuff, you can look at, and I can help you see how to record meetings. Scheduling meetings is important, like I said, for if you want to have a different URL, a different meeting ID for different meetings, then you can schedule different meetings. But honestly, for the last 4 years, up until this moment, basically, I never really scheduled meetings. I just used my personal meeting ID because that's all I really needed. But now when I'm saying, okay, everyone, you know, hundreds of people, here's this link. If I send you this now and then you click it a week later when I'm doing a different thing and then you interrupt that, then not you personally, but yeah. So scheduling meetings can give you a different meeting URL so that, you know, people don't join a meeting when they're not supposed to. All of this, so again, these basic functions, I hope that we can get everyone up to speed on this as soon as possible. As you become more familiar with those, then we'll talk more about these more advanced functions. So to look at the settings, you can either, if you have the app downloaded to your machine, or you can go online to zoom.us, which I guess is what it said earlier when I couldn't see it. And so when you log into either of those places, then you can look at some different settings. There's a ton of different settings, more than you probably need, but it's good to know they're there. So some best practices. So this term here, video conferencing etiquette, do's and don'ts. If you were to go Google video conferencing etiquette, you would get tons of results, a lot of them from universities, about video conferencing do's and don'ts. And rather than me trying to write all those up, we're going to compile a bunch of those for you and put them on that page that I'm talking about with more resources. You could also Google this and you'll find lots of stuff. We're going to try to help you get some of those together. Some examples are to be aware of your surroundings, right? So I'm trying to sit a comfortable distance back. I'm not trying to get too close up here and things like that. So visual, so I have a decent background behind me, decent lighting. Oral, so I know that if I were to start typing, I don't know what's going to happen when no. Okay. See, don't improvise. I'm annotating. 1 second. Okay, now I have this cool laser beam thing. I'm just going to go with that. So I know that if I'm typing, if I'm playing with my phone, if I take a drink, I mean, sometimes I need to drink some water, but if I'm making noise here, I'm using headphones right now, but if I was using the internal microphone on the computer, then all the typing would be amplified and projected to you. So be aware of your surroundings and the noise that you may be making. Oh, there's pointer. Okay, good. Thank goodness. Okay. Mute microphone when not speaking. Okay, great. So here I am muting you all. I'm saying, no, you're not going to talk. But a good practice is So if I'm the teacher, I don't need to mute in the bottom left every time that I stop talking. But like if I'm a student and I know that, so like right there, you probably are hearing that beeping. If I was a student and I knew I didn't need to talk for a while, then I would just mute, and then I can eat my cookie or whatever I have. I can eat chips, I can whatever. As long as I'm muted, then these extra noises aren't going to disrupt people. So mute microphone when not speaking typically is the best practice. And don't sit right next to Ellis Avenue is another good practice, but what can we do? Dress appropriately. Yes, you should wear pants, right? So I know you might think like, oh, they're only going to see me from the neck up or whatever, so maybe I don't need to wear pants. But the answer is yes, you should wear pants, because you don't know if you're going to have to get up and then, I mean, like if you're in your PJ bottoms or whatever. But so it's a good idea to dress appropriately completely. Not that I have any personal experience with this, just a best practice. Share these expectations with your students. So as you're finding these video conferencing etiquette do's and don'ts, if you find one that really works for you or sounds good, share that with your students. Let them know, hey, this is what I expect. You know, I expect you to wear pants or whatever it might be. Headset with a microphone is a good best practice. I mean, I'm using just this, whatever that comes on with a Mac or iPhone or whatever. And this allows me to, when I'm typing, that means you're not hearing, I'm not typing, but if I were typing, you wouldn't hear as much of the desk noise and whatever. So filters out some extra noise. It's just a good practice. Alice asked me to say that if you don't have this or can't get this, talk to your department, your language coordinator, or, I mean, we can try to help people. I mean, I don't know if the language center, I don't know, but basic headphones typically work. So this is a good practice. I think this is an important one, using students as a resource, right? Your students probably know more about video conferencing than you do or than I do, right? So the more you can use, if somebody say, oh, can you see this? No, oh, what's going on? Anybody know what's happening? What's wrong? So the more you can use students as a resource here, I think is going to be really good. I think also along with that, just trying to keep things light, right? I mean, I know it's not good to say, don't be nervous, don't worry about it, just have fun, whatever. Also, I'm not saying this is going to be fun, but the more we can make it fun and light. So if you're worried about every small thing that you aren't getting right, then it's going to show. But if you can say, okay, we're all in this together. This is a new experience. It's going to be crazy. Let's try to get through this together. Then I think that will turn out better for everyone. Okay, so I didn't get time to do this. Lots of things happening. So I will try to, in that document, I will, kind of, I mean, you don't need to know necessarily what happens. Well, I will try to spell out what are the differences between a free basic account and then a UChicago Pro account. This is, I mean, not this thing here, but this question of UChicago Pro accounts is the big question of the day. It seems like just today, I think Annalima said that she got her account. This is the announcement that I just saw from today, where it says, due to the university's move to remote learning, spring quarter, significant increase. No, if you are an instructor teaching a course in spring quarter, you do not need to submit a request. You will be provided with a UChicago Zoom account. So hopefully this is happening now or very, very soon. But this is, so when I say log in, do this, whatever, I know that until you have your account, it's hard to do that. So getting started, create an account, ? I think, so you could either, two options here are you could create an account, go to zoom.us and sign in with a personal email address, right? The only problem there is then once you get your university one, you'll have to always remember to differentiate between the two. But there's no harm in going to create a free account with a personal non-UChicago email address, only to keep them separate. And then you can just get started trying any of this out. On the other hand, you can wait until we hear from IT services if you haven't already. And then they should be hooking you up with your account if you're teaching this spring. And then between now and March 30th, I recommend practice as much as you can, whether that's with colleagues. If you can have a little working group with your colleagues, maybe you take turns being the host, or with friends and family. Like, I don't do this as much as I should, but I want to have like a Sunday night gathering with my family spread all across the country. They all click one link or use one Zoom ID, and they're all in the same room, same meeting space. I'm going to have a sandbox open this weekend. So let's say you don't have an account yet. I'm going to leave a Zoom meeting open all weekend, and I will put this link, I will email you this link, and I will put it on that thing where, please don't click this link right now because it'll take you out of, well, you can't do that, never mind. But this weekend, if you were to click this link, it will take you into an empty Zoom meeting. It might not be empty if someone else in this meeting or someone else here at UChicago. You kind of have to be ready to know that there might be some other people in there playing around. But this is a chance, if you don't want to create one with your personal email account and you don't want to wait until we hear from IT services, you could go into this meeting room and just kind of play around a little bit and try to get more familiar with things. Again, I will make this link super available. Okay. So I think that's the end of my portion. If it's okay, we'll have 4 minutes for very quick. If anyone has, let me make it so you can, 1 second. So at this point, I think you should be able to unmute yourself if you so choose. So if there's any technical questions about things that I've talked about, let's go ahead and try to unmute yourself and you can ask me some of those.
And we record on Zoom some lectures in advance and then post them on Canvas or do some things in advance before we sort of approach the entire group?
Yeah, that's a great question, great idea. Yeah, so I mean, let's say I was in this Zoom meeting by myself, like once you get your Zoom link or anytime you click the link and when it says participants, if it only says one participant, that means you're in there by yourself. And then as long as you're signed in as the host, only the host can record, but so you could record you by yourself there. That would be a great way to do like a flipped grammar lecture, right? So you could create your own like PowerPoint presentation, be the only person in the meeting, click record, go through that, and then you would have a video of that. That's a great idea.
And I save it or I share it?
Okay, so if you're recording, so right now it's recording. So when I end this meeting, so recording, you can either say record to the cloud, where it's going to then be stored on Zoom's servers. I think you have the option to download it whenever you want. Don't quote me on that. Or you can say record to this computer, which I prefer to do just so that I have the file with me. So I say record to this computer. So now when I end this meeting, it's automatically going to create a recording on my computer. It's going to process, depending on how long the meeting was, it will process that recording, but then it'll say Zoom.mp4 or something, and that will be the recording of that video.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. That's another thing that once you get your account, I recommend trying that out and see how it goes. That's a great question. Any other questions?
So I have a question. First of all, it would be very helpful if everyone could mute their microphones if they're not talking, because I really had trouble hearing anything. Like, I didn't understand what you were saying the entire time. So if you're not using your microphone, please mute it.
Everyone was muted for most of it.
For people that
okay. Yeah, let me try to, you're typically not going to be dealing with, 90 people. So, but yes, Shiva, I'm trying to find, Shiva, any questions?
Yeah, so I have a question. The question is basically, so do we have to send every session different invites, or we just send one invite and they can use that for the entire quarter?
So everyone is going to have, so Shiva, you will have your own meeting ID, right? So like I said, in the past, I have just used that one meeting ID for pretty much all of my meetings. So let's say, it depends on how many classes you have or whatever, but like you could totally use that thing. The only fear would be, let's say you're meeting with one class, and then if someone from your other class clicks that link, they might come in and interrupt your meeting, right? But if let's say you have 10 students and in one class session, all 10 students are there, and then you lock the meeting, that means no one else can accidentally interrupt.
I see. And my very last question is, can I upload also not upload, but can I use PowerPoint slides and walk through them while I'm teaching? And do I just share my screen?
That's what I'm doing right now. Yeah. So right now I have a PowerPoint or a Google Slides show, whatever, but a PowerPoint here, and then I share my screen. So I'm going through my slideshow on my computer, but you're seeing it on your end too, right?
Perfect. Okay, so you're not uploading them. You're just.
Nope. This is just me sharing my screen as I give a slideshow.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. One more question out there, maybe?
Yeah, hello. So
Go ahead.
so my question was, is Zoom related in any way to Canvas? And, you know, is there some kind of like interactive?
That's a good question.
To
There's one thing I forgot to say was, yeah, thank you. So is Zoom related to Canvas? On its own, no. And currently within UChicago, no. So for UChicago to integrate what are called learning tool integration, whatever, IT services has to go through a crazy process of security. I mean, they do it and they have, legally, FERPA, all these different considerations that they're taking into account. So right now, as far as I know, they are working on getting it integrated to Canvas, but as far as I've heard, it's not integrated within Canvas. Now, I could totally be sharing, instead of having you look at this slideshow, I could have you be looking at Canvas and we could be talking about things. And if I were to tell you, okay, go to Canvas, go to this module, whatever. So we could use Zoom on top of Canvas, but right now Zoom is not integrated into Canvas. There is a thing called Canvas conferences. So if you go to Canvas and you're looking at the thing on the left where it says modules, assignments, there's one thing that's called conferences that is run by a program called Big Blue Button. I think that works pretty well. I haven't used it in real life very much, but Cecilia Lowe from IT Services said, from the IT Services standpoint, Zoom is the #1 option, Big Blue Button is the #2 option, Google Hangouts is the #3 option. And always having so if you can become familiar with those things, having a backup plan is always a good idea. So right now I'm going to turn it over to Alba. Thank you for those questions. Let's see if I can do this right here. I'm going to make Alba the host. No, where's Alba? Okay, there she is. Okay, Alba. Alba, have you unmuted? Oh, I can't, I'm sorry. My bad.
Okay, now.
Oh, you good? We can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna mute myself and let you take over, okay?
Perfect. Okay, so also Nick, if you can check the chat, because some of the questions were very technical. I teach Catalan, I don't have anything, I don't know any information about how the university is dealing with all the license and everything. So, okay, my experience, I've been using Zoom teaching a Catalan reading course with students from 6 different locations, and also through CourseShare in the last 4 years. So I'm not an expert, but I have some experience using Zoom in language classes. I think some of us, starting in a few weeks, our life will look like this. I know some people are concerned if they are gonna teach from the university, but I think some of us will do that probably from home. And as Nick said, pay attention at little things, probably you don't want a background like now that I have the light coming from the back. That's usually not a good idea, or a lot of distracting things on your background, but yes. So I think one of the big concerns when talking about online teaching languages online is what happens with the speaking part and the communication, the oral communication. And I think one of the big advantages of Zoom is that it allows us to, as we are doing now, one person can be speaking, or as we will see, several people can have conversations at the same time. And I think that's going to be key when moving or transitioning on an online setting. And talking about that, I think the big advantage of Zoom, or what I why I fell in love with Zoom a few years ago was because of the breakout rooms. I don't know what your classes look like, but in language classes, very often we have our students work in small groups, in pair work, or in groups of 2 or 3 students. And that's one of the things that, as you can imagine, for what we've seen so far with Nick, it would be very difficult right now for me to tell, okay, now in pairs, like discuss what you did last weekend. That it's something that we do on a daily basis in all our classes. And Zoom has a very cool feature, which is these breakout rooms, which is like I can create as a host. So you right now cannot do that. So your students will not be able to do that, but you are able to do that. And that's organize everybody in a meeting in small meetings. So I could divide you now in, if we are 90 people, like in 10 groups of 9 or more than that, or whatever design I would want to do. So I'm not sure if we have time to do that. On the bottom of one of the links we'll give you, we wanted to try that, but because we're a lot of people and we are running a little bit short of time, we'll give you a link on how to do that, a video that is a tutorial and tells you and walks you through the whole process, how it's very easy. You just click at the bottom of your screen, and you will have it says breakout rooms, and you will have a screen that tells you how do you want to do that. You can decide who talks with who, which is very nice. You can decide, or you can do or Zoom can decide how to divide your students. So for those concerned on what my class will look like and how I will be able to do pair work or have my students work in small groups, like Zoom has you covered, and that's a great feature, and it's very easy to work, to make it work. And like I use it on a daily basis in my classrooms, and it's very quick to use. So you can have your students separate in groups and then come back and then separate and then come back several times in a 50-hour session, and it works very seamless and smoothly. And another great feature is the chat. And I know you will tell me like, yeah, Alba, of course, like that's very obvious. But when I think in a face-to-face class, more or less our students, like you can see who's not paying attention, but who's following what you're explaining. And because we will have students a little bit everywhere with different internet connections, their internet might break sometimes. It's important to give them input orally and also written. So the chat is a great support to just write things down. Sometimes how do you spell a word, or anything that you would use, for example, on the Blackboard in a class, you can use the chat. Or just if you want to provide extra input. So do not forget, because I think sometimes we are very focusing on speaking and we forget that we have the chat there. So that's a great tool. And as another big advantage is, as Nick was saying, that the instructor has a lot of control. So you can mute all students, not that you don't want your students to speak, but you can organize them in groups. Like Zoom allows you to coordinate and have quite a lot of control of what's going on in your class. So synchronous interaction, all these extra features. There's also the raise hand. So students, if you have them muted, they can click on raise hand. So you can see that someone wants to ask you a question, and then you can, so if you have like several people asking questions, you can, that's a nice way of organizing that. Breakout rooms, especially I would say like for language classes, classes that are organized in discussions, maybe they will not use that feature that much, but in a language class, especially lower levels, I think that's key. And yeah. But what about the challenges? Students, and I think our students especially, like being part of a community, and I think in language classes that happens often in all classes, like that feeling of belonging like to a group. And that's very difficult, or it's a little bit more challenging to achieve, I think, in a setting like this one. So we'll see how to do that, or I have some tips at the end on how to create activities that allow you to create a bigger sense of community. Moving online it's not just taking everything we have and just putting in an online format, but some activities might need some adaptation in order to work on these issues. And same thing with building group dynamics. What happens with the Blackboard and chalk? I'm like, if you come to see one of my classes, I like writing a lot on the Blackboard. So as I was saying, one thing is to use the chat, but I encourage you to use Google Docs and other tools that will allow you to write in parallel of having your Zoom session. And then get ready for technical difficulties. I don't want to be, I think it's part of, as Nick was saying, I think everybody will be very open to things, like to be flexible, but things will happen, and try not to get too frustrated, because I think yesterday, for example, I spent almost 1 hour fixing little things for this presentation. And I think the students will have problems, and we should be there to support them. And also we will feel frustrated. I think we have the university supporting us, but it's a little bit like when you start, at least that was my experience when I started teaching online. When I started teaching languages, I had everything very prepared, and I felt like moving online, you need some extra preparation. You need to visualize what's going to happen, and you need to have plan A, plan B, and plan C in case things happen. So that's it. So some tips. First of all, as I was saying, plan A, plan B, and C, and D, and E. We should think, as Nick was saying, I think we want to keep things not too complicated. So try to get familiar, and you don't need to use 10,000 different tools. But it's a good plan to relieve stress, especially when you are teaching your 50 minutes on Zoom, to have a plan B. I know in my experience that reassures me a lot. And also it allows you, if a student has an issue, like they can, if there's a technical difficulty, you can have your students doing another activity or exercise. So be aware of, or having extra activities that your students can have in case whatever like you had planned, maybe that day internet is not working, maybe there's some kind of technical difficulty. So have a plan B so you can keep that class going on in a different format, maybe not as much synchronous, but more asynchronous. And also have plan A and B in order to accommodate as many students as possible. Someone was saying that in the chat, and I had it also planned to discuss it today, not all of our students will have the same settings. So we should be able to, accommodate, or my advice would be try to accommodate as many students as possible. And in order to do so, Zoom is great and it's extremely useful, but it's not the only ingredient. And I think when I'm now planning on how to teach my classes next quarter, I'm also thinking of other tools and other ways of teaching in order, as I was saying, to try to accommodate as many students possible in as many settings as possible. So you have Canvas, of course. We have Google Docs that we can use the account from the university. And there are other tools. If you're not familiar with those, or do not worry too much, but I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with Flipgrid, Padlet, and Poll Everywhere. I will show you some screenshots of activities you can do with those, with this software. So one thing that I do often, I have in my Coursera courses, that means that I have students here at the University of Chicago taking a regular class face-to-face, but at the same time, every quarter I have some students in remote, like remote students in other universities taking the same class. What happens sometimes is that we will have like some kind of technical difficulty, and I want to continue my class with my students here in Chicago, but I don't want my students who are in other universities to get lost. Something that has worked very well for me is to provide them with a pre-class plan. So not only give them the homework for that day, but just an idea of what are we gonna do. That means that if something happens, they know what to do and they can continue doing some of the exercises or whatever we are doing that day. And they feel less lost. And I think there's the feeling that they have for missing out on something or frustration can be alleviated by that. And another thing that works also very well is a post-class summary. And once again, if there's a student that for some reason one day cannot follow the whole class because again, like, yeah, because whatever reason, providing every day with a post-class summary, like what we've done, not just what homework do you have for the next day, but what we've seen in class. That allows them, I think, to have this feeling of not missing out and being able to follow. It's just something very easy to do once you get the habit, and I think it makes a big difference.
Alba,
yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. There's a lot of demand for seeing the breakout rooms. If you think we can.
Oh yeah, we can do that.
Okay, great.
Okay,
yeah.
Let's do that. Okay. Sorry, I will have to do this though. Here my. Boom, boom, boom.
So I had asked Al. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
They don't appear on. Can you do that, Nick?
What's that?
From here?
I no longer have breakout room privileges now that you're the host.
Okay. Perfect. So what will happen now is that you will receive a little message that says you will be sent in a breakout room in 30 seconds, 29, 28. Don't worry. And then you will be sent to a different, like a chat like the one, like, sorry, a Zoom, like a meeting like the one we have with a smaller group of people. When you are there, feel free to unmute yourself or to activate your camera, and you can talk. I will let you for 1 or 2 minutes. You can talk with the rest of the group, and then we'll be back.
Hello. Hi, can you hear me?
Hi.
Hello, how are you?
I'm well, thanks. How are you?
Good. Welcome to breakout room 16, apparently.
Yeah.
If anyone else.
See anyone else though?
Yes,
Yeah,
I'm in a breakout room too.
Everyone else has their video turned up, and there's Alice. And so,
Hello.
oh yeah, my video is now on. So people can start or stop their video,
Hi.
unmute themselves. So yeah, this is a breakout room. So Alba could come in here and kind of keep an eye on us, or she could bounce around between different breakout rooms.
Would we see her if she came in?
That's a good question. I was telling her or someone, like, maybe you want to be seen, but then the students might think, oh, what do we do now, Alba? But if they can't see you, then it's not so much as you don't want to be there secretly. They don't know that, but at times you just want to be walking around the group and just have them keep doing what they're doing. So I think if her video, and it depends on the number of participants. So I think if her video was on and she came in, I think we would see her. But I would recommend, if you wanted to kind of just be walking around in the background, turn your video off before we did that. Any questions?
So I have a question, Nick. So how does it work then? So I'm talking to the other people in the group and they just have to listen to me.
Yeah, I mean, like, you're not muted. I don't know why we can hear. Oh, I think Lisa's in a room with other humans right now. But so yeah, I mean, as long as we're all unmuted and we all have our audio on right now, we can all see and hear each other. So yeah. So in these breakout rooms, you know, we would probably muting ourselves is less of a concern in these breakout rooms when there's not 100 people there. So we're hearing noise from Misa's room just because she's watching it with a watch party, which is great.
So Nick, I have another question. So we see you in our large screen, and then we see the other people on top.
Okay.
How would it work? How does it look for the students? Do they just see the people on the top, or who's in the middle?
Well, right now I'm a student too. So in the top right, if you click speaker view or gallery view, then that will toggle between seeing everyone or seeing only. So speaker view means you're seeing the active speaker. So whoever is making noise, talking at that time. So yeah, try that if you haven't. So right now I'm on speaker view, so I can see Misa and I can see the rest of you at the top.
So when we do speaker view, that means that you can see me full screen.
Well, so remember, speaker view or gallery view is different, is like an endpoint control. So you could have it on speaker view and I could have it on gallery view. I mean, for students, they would typically, if you're, at times when the teacher is up there, we have 19 seconds. We'd probably want students to have it on speaker view when the teacher is giving or when any one person is giving, you know, doing the talking. If it's a group discussion, then gallery view is good to see everyone at the same time.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. All right, goodbye.
Okay, perfect. So, okay, you got the experience. I think that changes everything. I think everybody can imagine using them, using these breakout rooms in their class. And it took no time and it goes, yeah, back and forth. So when using though, when working on these breakout rooms, there is the chat, but one issue with the chat is that once you close the conversation or the meeting, goodbye chat. So one of the things I do when I have students working in breakout rooms, that again, I use it on a daily basis, I use Google Docs, or any other kind of collaborative tool where everybody can write together. So every breakout room has its own, and I organize that on Canvas. So on my Canvas in modules, they have this Trabalhan group, which means like when they are organized in breakout rooms, each group has its own Google Docs, and then they can all write. And that means that they can work on an assignment. They can be writing a dialogue in like go to a restaurant or any, you know, typical, or they can be discussing a short story they've read. And they can, you know, like write, but also put together some ideas that maybe they will present later on in class. So like, let's imagine that they've read a short story, they arrive home in class, you divide them for 5-10 minutes in small groups, they work, they take notes, and then everybody joins together, and then we share like our small discussions. That's, I think, an excellent, like, or a good example of how Zoom can be used in a class. And what I also do, and because I don't have, like, again, because of the Blackboard situation, on my Canvas sites, they also have like a Blackboard link to a Google Docs. And I use it like to take notes or write things that I would write on a Blackboard on a regular basis. And what I do is I have like one Google Docs per class, per course. So I create like each day it's a new page. I put the date, and at the end of the quarter they have like all the notes in one document. And as we were saying, also when creating online groups, and that's not related to Zoom, but that's related to Canvas. But those who know me, you know that that's a topic that I like talking about. It's how to create, how to build community in online classrooms. And what I often do is on Canvas, I use the discussion boards. I leave like an open discussion, like it's their space that I go and I comment, but it's a space where they can share pieces of news. I deleted the names of the students, but those were just students who one day we had talked about food, and just one student like shared this recipe. Another one was like we had like very bad weather in Catalonia. So students, so provide them with spaces where they can gather, even if it's online, since they will not be able to do that on a regular basis here in campus. And also Zoom is great, but as we've been saying, it's great for synchronous communication. But if that's not always possible, and that might be the case, I would invite you to think of places of gathering that might not be synchronous. What I mean is, usually in a regular class, students work on their own outside the class, and the class is the moment where they all gather. But online, if you think how you communicate with your friends and family, sometimes it's synchronous, but sometimes online is asynchronous. Like you text, I communicate with friends with text, like apps that have text services, or I send them voice messages and things like that. So I invite you to use asynchronous also ways of interaction and communication, because those might be more available to all our students. So yeah, I just invite you to combine both and maybe think of other ways of communicating and gathering your students in a place that might not be always Zoom and synchronous. So I use Padlet, like I had like students, that was a translation class, well, the reading class. So each one would, like each group of students would write a text, and they would work on it each other. Sorry, they would discuss it later on. They would also read a novel, and they look for pieces of art that remind them, and then they explain it, why. And then that's in the bottom, you have like a Flipgrid, and Flipgrid, it's like a platform when they can record short videos. You can do that also on Canvas, and then they can respond to those videos. So not all the communication or interaction has to be done synchronously on Zoom, but maybe think of other ways of doing that. Yeah, and think of, as we said, like providing input in different formats. So that's it.
Okay, so I think, so Alba, if you're able to make it so that people can unmute, so please understand that, you know, there's going to be the classic, somebody starts talking and then somebody else starts talking. So if you, yes, we can stick around for a while and answer these questions, but if any of you have to go, feel free. The door is in the bottom right there where it says leave meeting. But so if you want to unmute and ask some questions, go for it.
Just want to say thank you.
Yeah, like we can use the.
You're welcome.
In